Testing, testing.
Nice. Okay. So we're going to get started. We're very happy to have Kristen Peronis with us from the Visit Annapolis in Anne Arundel County. What's the rest of that? Is it? That's it. Okay, great. But before that, we are going to hear from Dan Cryan the list of candidates for our upcoming election. Before that, if everybody could rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, so for the executive committee, going forward, the election committee is, so far we've got Kara Morris as the president. She's going to continue. Glenn Holler as the vice president. Adam Hertz will be our new treasurer. Adam's up here running the technology. I'll continue as the secretary. And then for the board members, Elizabeth Brady, there she is. Sandy Hartzell, Anthony Bynum, Dave Coleman, Jonathan McGowan, I know he's here, okay. Lori Shook, who also does our monitor, Casey Wetzel, and the newest board member, Megan Scheffel. And I don't believe she's here today either, but she'll be the new one. And we have one other person that's interested, so if he shows up next month, we'll do a vote off. Okay. It's nice having people interested. And do you want me to go over the balances too? Or? Okay. So our beginning balance at the end of last month was $19,479.79. We had $80.30 in credits, 30 cents in debits, and our ending balance as of the 30th of last month was $19,559.79.
Okay. So, Kristen, if you'd like to take it away.
Me too. Well, thank you all. Can you hear me okay? All right. So, actually, Casey just asked me, do I speak to a lot of resident groups? And no, you're my first one. So that's really great. And I was thinking about what I wanted to say to all of you. And so let's just picture this. Yesterday, I'm walking my dog and it's really cold because it got cold again after I thought it was spring. And I don't even want to get into that because I'm really bitter about it. But 5:30 in the morning, I've got my dog, got my coat, got my hat, have my pajama pants on, a robe, and all that under the coat. So I look really great. I just look awesome, right? 5:30 in the morning. And I run into my retired neighbor, Mike, and his dog, Bo. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm taking a walk because I have to get to work. I have a meeting." He's like, "I've known him now 3 years. What do you do?" I was like, "I'm not sure what I do. You know, I do tourism for Anne Arundel County." So that's what I said. I'm like, that was quick. He goes, "Oh, does that mean that you, like, when somebody gets here, you tell them what to do?" I'm like, "Well, that's kind of what we do, but it's not really what we do." And I realized then that most residents have no idea what we do and why we do it because you're not our target audience, right? We're going out to visitors 50 miles plus to get them coming to Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. So we don't get to talk about what we do with you. And so I really appreciate the opportunity because I think what we do is really important to what that means for your quality of life. So I have some notes, but I will say this. This is for you. I know my job, right? Like I already know what I do. I know what I do every day. I can tell you what I do every day. But if you have questions, I'd rather you ask them. Like before I start, if you have any burning questions about why we do what we do or something random that you want to know about this destination, I know we're right by the airport. There's got to be a lot of questions about that. So interrupt me. I'd rather have it be more of a conversation than a presentation because I think that that's kind of boring. So and when I say like interrupt me, I mean like put your hand up. And I know I forgot your name already. Elizabeth will come over with that microphone. So I'm going to sit down to make it a little more conversational, but then I'll probably use my hands and stand up again anyway. So tonight I figured I'd focus a little bit on how tourism really strengthens communities, right? It's not just about that visitor, supports local businesses. To be really honest, when we talk to local businesses, residents can't keep them afloat. They need those visitors from outside to come in because you all can't, I can't eat that much. We can't all go out that much to do so. And we really know that when we have a great visitor experience, that's great quality of life for our residents. And I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll show you some pretty pictures to prove it too. So again, ask me a lot of questions, and I want to say that this idea of a great place to visit starts with a great place to live is true. Somebody mentioned that Allison Pickard might come tonight, and I've told the story before, and I'm going to tell it now just to fulfill my promise to you. When I first started my job, it was about 5 years ago. I was maybe 3 days in my job. I was still figuring it out. I came from outside the industry. If you know anything about the organization, we had a huge turnover about 5 years ago, right before I came on board, and I was brought in to fix that, right? That's not what I'm going to talk about. That's a TED Talk for another day. But what was interesting about it, Allison asked me to come meet with her and her staff. And so I went out to Glen Burnie to the town center there. And she said, "You're not doing your job." I'm like, well, first of all, 3 days in, I'm Kristen. Who are you, right? But you know Allison, she's tough and she's good and she knows what she's doing. And she cares about her community. She's like, "You're not bringing visitors to Glen Burnie. You're not bringing them to this town center." So I had a moment of like, okay, how do I handle this? One, do I lie to her and just apologize? "I'm sorry, I'll do better." I'm like, no, I can't start with that. I have to be really honest. And I said, if you can't get your community and you can't get your residents to come out here, how the heck do you think I'm going to get a visitor to come out here? You have to have that community and sense of place. And to her credit, she started investing in that area. She worked with economic development. Amy Gowan did a lot of work there to bring in art and to bring in a sense of place and to do placemaking and have a farmer's market there. And so she lived up to her end of the bargain. So now we're going to try and live up to our end of the bargain too. But I think it really shows that it's not about visitors or residents. It's got to work for both. Oh my God, I just told a story about you and you missed it. And it was positive. So whew. Of course I wouldn't. Of course I wouldn't. Well, that was really good timing. You guys would have outed me anyway, so I had to come to it. So tourism doesn't just happen by accident. It really comes out of a sense of purpose and an identity for a destination. We know, and I'll go back to the elected officials. A lot of times when I meet with elected officials, they tend to think it's either going to be residents or tourists. There's this tension between it, because if it's good for the visitors, it's probably not going to be good for the residents. If it's good for the residents, tourists won't care, and it's actually not the case. You have to have this balance. I don't know how many of you have gone to a destination where you're like, that's a tourist trap. You feel it. You don't feel like part of a community. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic. You don't feel welcome. What you feel like is a wallet walking down the street and everybody wants your money. That does not feel good. I mean, I've been there. You get off a cruise ship and that's what you feel like. Nobody wants to live in a place like that. And I care about our community. I know you care about our community. So it's all about that balance. And I think it's really what makes our destination and our organization a little bit different. And I'm really proud of that. So a little bit about our organization. I could get into the governance and the background like I joked about before with you, but I won't do that. But we are, there are 25 destination marketing organizations across the state, 23 counties, and Baltimore City and Ocean City. So we're one of 25. We all get together and really focus on, I think you probably know, Maryland's pretty small. So when we talk about county lines, our visitors are not tripping over the county lines. We need to work as a region and as a state to be more competitive. Because we don't invest as much as our surrounding states, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia invest more in tourism than us. Like, that's an embarrassment, but I won't get into that right now. I mean, by a factor of like 5 times. So we have to be really creative and thoughtful. They bought the rights to John Denver's song in West Virginia, to give you a sense of that. So Country Road, yeah, not bad. We're not doing that. So as a destination marketing organization, we are really charged with promoting and advertising those activities that will bring visitors from 50 miles and beyond to our destination, with the idea that they'll stay overnight, spend some money, go to attractions, go to restaurants, really uplift our economy here. The other side of that is the destination management. If we don't think about what that visitor experiences when he or she is here, we've already failed. We've got to live up to the promise that's in our advertising. So that really focuses on things like feeling welcomed, feeling like you are part of that community. It's safe roads, it's bright lights, it's all of these things and activities that make you feel like a community and not just that tourist trap. And I think that's really important. We end up in conversations that are so very different than you think. I mean, I have conversations about potholes and and lights and air traffic and destination development at the airport. And it's all really exciting. So when my neighbor said, like, oh, do you tell people what to do when they get here? Yeah, sure, we're happy to do that. But there are a lot of other things we have to do to get ready for that answer. Okay, I'm going to pause. Any questions right now? Oh, come on. All right.
How big is the organization, like your team and all?
Well done. You're not just the treasurer and tech. You actually brought me into my next slide. So I'll go backwards before I answer that, though. About 5 years ago, again, I mentioned our organization went through a transition, a really big, public, ugly transition, and I came on board. But it didn't matter because it was during COVID and the whole world changed, right? So we wanted to think about, with our board and our staff, what we wanted to be and who we wanted to be. We didn't want to be a typical DMO. We didn't want to be the heads and beds transactional tourist trap that we all know. So we sat down with our partners, our community, and said, what do we really need? And this is what we came up with, that whole idea that travel transforms lives. You don't just want to go to a destination and pick up a plastic keychain, although if you want a plastic keychain, go get it. But really what people want is an experience to come back and tell their family about. And that's what gets people to want to go to a destination. One thing about our county is, as an aside, Maryland does this survey every year on return visitors. Our county has more return visitors. So if they come to this community, they want to come back, and they come back 7 times more than any other visitor. That's pretty great, because you would think maybe Ocean City or Baltimore, but it's our county, and I thought that was a nice point of pride that I wanted to share. So our organization, we are, let's go back a little bit. We are a 501c6. So if you know anything about governance, I really won't get into it, but a 501c6 is a partnership-based organization. Our budget, when I started, just to give you a sense of things, we had 7 staff people, including me, and our budget was $2.1 million. That's a decent nonprofit budget. We feel really good about that. Because of investments from the county and the work on our end to really look at our revenue and our options there, we are now 26 staff members, and our budget is $7.9 million. So we, in that time, because we did the right things and focused on the visitor experience, the revenue came with it. And so that's really exciting for us. We do think we're pretty much at where we need to be right now as far as our size. We do have some thoughts on some additional investments we want to make for long term, but we can talk about more about that later. So answered your question? All right. I'll keep going there. So I think one of the things you all talked about was the idea that tourism is economic development. Really, a lot of times what happens when a company is thinking about moving to a state or a region, they want to know about the quality of life. What are the families going to do? How are the schools going to be? What's life really going to be like there? You don't want to pick up your company and move to a place that nobody wants to live. You're not going to get the workforce that you need. So we really do think that we are economic development. We're almost like the handshake, and the business is coming could be the hug at the end. But it's a great way to introduce people to our destination. Again, we said, if you like this place, you might want to live here. And I can't tell you how many real estate agents want to advertise on our visitor guide because they come here and people want to stay here. And that's a really great thing for us because they do feel like they're part of that community. So I think it's important to understand that those dollars are coming from outside the county. I mentioned the 50 miles or more, outside the state, and even international dollars are coming in. And I'll talk a little bit about international in a moment when I talk about BWI. It's a little tricky right now for any tourism organization, but I won't get into politics as much as just say what we're doing about that. I don't like to focus too much on the numbers, but I hear treasure, and I know people are interested in numbers, so I wanted to mention this. We have about 7.2 million visitors that come every year, and they spend $4.3 billion. Those are big numbers. That is 20% of the tourism that comes into the state of Maryland. So our county, one of 25 organizations, one of 25 destinations, brings in 20% of that economic development. But if you think about that, our county is quite large. It encompasses BWI all the way to South County. I mean, that's a really big county with a lot to offer. And I think because we are so central and we are the state capital, we have a lot to offer, and I think that's exciting. I did want to just spend a moment on these 19,000 jobs. That seems impressive. That's about 10% of our labor market in Anne Arundel County works in hospitality and tourism. That number is about 3,500 lower than what we had in 2019. So what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for our visitors? We have restaurants that don't take reservations. They can't seat you even though they have empty seats. We have hotels that won't book additional rooms. They'll cap their capacity. We have museums that'll have limited hours. I'm not joking. We have one museum that calls us every morning to let us know what hours they will be open that day so they can tell the visitors. That is a tough way to run a business. That is a tough way to bring visitors in. It's a tough way to serve the community. So we think that this is a huge problem when it comes to economic development. One of the things we noticed in our strategic plan when we talked about what was happening with our partners is it was always workforce first. It wasn't getting more visitors. It was help us get the workforce up. So we started a foundation, a 501c3, partner a lot with Anne Arundel County Workforce Development. Their offices are really close to here. And we are working with grants and trying to get more people into this industry. What we know is hospitality jobs are often people's first job or a second chance job or returning to the workforce job. So we think we have a lot to offer people, but there's a lot of misinformation about careers in hospitality. I've learned a lot in my 5 years in being here, coming from outside the industry, and people are surprised when I say that I'm in hospitality and tourism because it really does. It trains you for so many things, and it could be that first job, and it could be I'm going to retire in it. I can tell you that right now. After these 5 years, I don't want to be outside of this industry. Any questions there? I'll pause for a moment. Awesome, Kara. Oh. Yes, I will. It's a really great partner of ours. In fact, I met with the CEO today. It's Historic Annapolis, their museum at 99 Main. And so right now they're open 4 hours a day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But if somebody calls out, they're not open. So that's a problem, right? They have paid staff that's there. They have different people that work there. We actually worked with them. This is the good part about that. So we know a problem, right? And we know we have a workforce issue. We put a grant together with them. So we're actually going to help them with this. To train more people that can work there so they can have more workforce there. One of the things that we would like to do is really round out the way that our visitors come. You say 7.2 million visitors. You don't want them all coming on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You want them to come throughout the week and really spread that out so you don't feel that burden of tourism. So I'm glad you asked the question, but I'm very sad for them. If you've not been to 99 Main, I will personally take you there. It's a really quick trip around the museum, but they've done an amazing job really focused on the attractions around there. And they focus also on preservation of our historic city in Annapolis, so a great place to donate.
So what is the biggest tourism draw currently? Is it the Naval Academy or the...
Well, that's a sad story right now. The Naval Academy is closed to outside visitors. So there are no visitors going to the academy right now. Before this, school groups might have an exemption right now. That's a good, but our visitor this over the transit because of the war in Iraq, the war in Iran. Sorry, yes, that's exactly why it's a national. I mean, keep in mind that is a secure institution, and it happens to be a school as well. So it is a naval base, and so just so you're all aware, I worked there for 16 years prior to this job, so I know the Naval Academy well. That is one of our main attractions. The other thing that surprises people, more numbers even than the Naval Academy, is Arundel Mills. People go to that region, so Arundel Mills Live Casino. Shopping is still one of the biggest attractions. After that, you'd say historic Annapolis, so people walking around downtown. Medieval Times, definitely a draw. Do you know City Councilman Burke Schandelmeyer started his career there 20 years ago? Yeah. So again, a job in hospitality, you can be an elected official. Pretty great career path there. I'm not even sure how to respond to that, but I think I'm going to like resident groups a whole lot more. No one's ever said that.
I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but it'd be interesting to know the 5 top draws, like the Ren Fest, the film. And
it's probably going to be a little difficult to answer that without doing a little bit more research. And the reason being is they're not all equal. It's really comparing sort of apples and oranges because the Ren Fest runs a whole lot longer than, say, something like the boat shows or something like the Annapolis Film Festival. So it's really hard to say that. We do a lot of work on showing the economic impact of all the attractions and the festivals, and especially those that we sponsor. But I don't have a numbers to numbers comparison for that. It's a great question and one that I'll get an answer to.
It also seems that it's all down very much further south than us.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, so I was thinking about this driving here, especially when I was driving through, going down 97 through I was in Millersville yesterday. but seeing all the signs for BWI, it is really important for our organization to focus on the BWI corridor. And the reason being, two reasons being, one, it's the right thing to do, and that is our mission. But the other is a majority of our funding comes from that area. And the reason is we are funded through the hotel tax. So the hotel tax visitors pay when they come here is 8%. Of that 8%, 17% comes to us. Of that budget that we talked about earlier, right? That represents, I'll say, about 65% of our budget. Annapolis represents about 25, 30, and the rest is self-generated. So it is our job to make sure that we're bringing things in there. What you don't necessarily see as a resident, because it's not quite the same, is one of our missions is to bring in groups. You mentioned school groups, but groups, adult groups, Scrabble competitions, all different things to live casino. So we're making sure that we're filling out their areas to make sure that people are coming in and seeing that as well. So it's really finding that balance of what works there and what works outside of it. Because South County is a totally different challenge because of the way they want to welcome visitors versus, say, Arundel Mills does. But you just hit on something, that the diversity of our county is absolutely a selling point. The diversity of our county makes it really hard for sort of a one-stop-fits-all sort of marketing approach.
So a question from online. This is from Dan Woomer, who's watching live on Facebook right now, but he is an active dues-paying member, so thank him for that, even though he's not here in person. He wants to know, if Maryland is investing $7.9 million, what is the ROI, probably the return on investment, for that $7.9 million?
$4.3 billion. Yeah, that's a great question. And so I want to be really clear. When we say the 7.9, that is Anne Arundel County. That is this destination. The state of Maryland has a separate budget. And then across those 25 DMOs that I mentioned, they all have different budgets and they're funded in different ways. Some are of the county, some are separate 501c6s like ours. So it's very different models across that. What we have found in this county and in this destination, because we have so much to offer and we have so many diverse partners, it really makes sense for us to be a 501c6 versus part of the county, because we can be much more agile than government or state can be. Great question, though. I love those questions because I'm actually thrilled to hear it's not just like, why are you spending the money? It's called it an investment, because I think it's really important to understand what that investment brings to all of us. I thought I saw a hand. Oh,
So this is about the workforce development issue. Doesn't the local high school here in North County have a program for that, hospitality and all that?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. The two partners that our foundation
And
has.
does it work?
Yes, it works. And in fact, we've hired them for our events, the students that work there. We have an apprentice right now that's in college. So we work very closely with Anne Arundel Community College and North Arundel High School, because both of them have a pipeline. So it's not just the... Did I turn that off? North County. I'm sorry. I think I said the wrong thing there. I think it's because I pushed a button on the mic and I don't know what I pushed. So if you can still hear me, we're all good. One of the things that, when you think about workforce, it's one, increasing your pipeline. So the way you're going to increase your pipeline is through younger folks, right? They're not working now, but they can work. The thing that you really have to work about then is retention. Our industry had a catastrophic failure with retention during COVID. They were told to go home. They found other jobs. They started driving for Uber. They went to Amazon and delivered packages. And it was interesting to see a lot of them like, oh, I don't have to go back and deal with the public, right? They're like, I can just deal with this box, drop it on somebody's, set it very nicely on somebody's stoop and walk away. Like, they can be good about that. But what they're finding is that they miss that, because it is an industry that makes you feel welcome, and it's exciting, and it's really just, you start to see how your community is built around it. And you're not going to necessarily get that driving an Uber unless you really want to, or delivering those packages. Great questions. Should I keep going? Oh, yeah, please.
And you probably answered it with this gentleman's question here, but outside of Annapolis and Arundel Mills and the Renaissance Fair, I'm assuming, what else is there in Arundel County?
So one of the things that differentiates Anne Arundel County from, I'll say, almost anywhere is our access to the Chesapeake Bay. So there are more than 500 miles of shoreline. So I think that is what attracts people, that idea of getting out on the water, the idea of being a part of this huge Chesapeake Bay. What's funny is I mentioned the international visitors. international visitors don't know Annapolis. They certainly don't know Anne Arundel County, right? They just don't. Even when I travel, I say I'm from DC. It's a whole lot easier. They sometimes don't know Baltimore, but what they know, interestingly enough, in our research, is they know the Chesapeake Bay, and it's pretty crazy so that is a big draw for us. And so that touches so much of our county, and actually so much more than just our county in Maryland.
Fine, but isn't a very, 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 very limit, like a mile of it, public access?
Let's talk about accessibility.
Yeah.
That is a huge problem. And it's something that I know Annapolis has worked on really well. And the county executive has really made a point of it with river days and different things. Because one of the things we found, and I think this will be of interest to you, Casey, is when somebody gets on the water, they start to care about the Chesapeake Bay, right? They see the effect of that. And so one of the projects that we worked on, and so I didn't plan on talking about this, but since you sort of teed it up, is we received a federal grant from EDA to look at putting together a passenger ferry across the Chesapeake Bay. Not just Anne Arundel County, but we were working with Calvert County, St. Mary's, Somerset, Queen Anne's, and us. I got all 5. I didn't want to offend anyone, right? Because that person on Facebook might tell on me. But what we found is we got a small federal grant is $250,000. $250,000 is still a big amount of money, but in a study like this that's so encompassing, it's very hard to have a large scope of work. So it was a narrowly defined focus, and it was, would a passenger ferry, not car ferry, electric, work across the Chesapeake Bay for tourism, right? And the answer was yes, and you have a very narrow path forward. And that was really exciting. So we said, that's great. This is not our job. We are not ferry people. We are not going to set up, I'm not going to have a captain's hat. Like, none of this is ever going to happen with us. But 2 things happened after that. Well, actually 3 now. First, the city of Annapolis received a small grant for a pilot program to take a small 6 to 8 person plus bikes ferry around, like sort of a commuter ferry around different spots in Annapolis, and they're still working through that now. Even more exciting, the county government got a grant, about $4.3 million, to put that first route in from Annapolis to Baltimore to Queen Anne's County. And so that's in progress right now. That is absolutely a county project. While we'll go through our study with them, we're not doing the ferry. So I want to be really clear. It's out of our hands. We did that first step. Now there are a million others that other people are going to do. So that was a long way of going from, I forget your original question.
Well, just the limited access for the public to and just another question, as far as the amount the amount of mileage that you mentioned, like 500 million miles of shore.
500.
Yeah. Okay. In the county, and you can see it on the map, but is that, and it's so inaccessible, is that basically just like gated communities or private, or how does?
I don't know the breakdown of it. I could probably get back to you on that. I'm not expert in that area, but I do know that it's a lot of private shoreline, right? So if somebody lives on the water, you're not going to go walk through theirs to throw your paddleboard in. But there are great places that are protected, like Sandy Point State Park, right? The city dock in Annapolis is being reimagined to be much more accessible, because right now you can't do anything down there quite easily. So the city of Annapolis is taking on a project not just to make it sort of protected from climate change and sea level rise, but to really make it a place that people feel welcome, because it's not the best attraction right now. But if you had a park down there and a waterfront welcome center, and you could get on boats right there, that would be pretty accessible.
Cool. Thank you.
Great questions, though. There are also pocket parks all through the city of Annapolis that you have access to. There is a great study that the city planner there, Eric Lashinsky, did, and he talks a lot about bike access and waterfront access, water access to do that. It's really an important issue for residents, but I'm going to tell you, it's also for visitors. And that's one area that they're so aligned, because so many of our visitors want to get to that Chesapeake Bay. I don't know how much time I have, so I'm like, tell me if I need to speed up or to slow down or what. Okay, I'll keep answering questions. I love this stuff. So one of the things I think is really important talked about, even though I talked about the numbers and we kind of got caught up in them for a minute, we don't do the work because of those things, right? If we're just focused on that transactional part, and that's what you can easily happen in this industry, you start focusing on, I told you most of our funding comes from hotel stays, right? That tax there. If that's all we focused on, that experience would absolutely suffer. And I think that that's where some DMOs sort of get out of whack with their communities, are focused on just the overnight stay, the overnight stay, the overnight stay, and they don't make sure that those people that are staying actually have something to do and have something enjoyable and have something to come back to. So I feel like the way we've approached it is really important. We are judged by our numbers, and we're going to get great questions like, we have this level of investment and now you want to make more. What more are we going to get for it? And I think it's a fair question, especially when it comes to tax dollars and people's dollars, where it goes. But I do want to make sure you all understand that all of this, things like the Songwriters Festival in Annapolis, that wouldn't happen if not for our organization sponsoring that. We sponsored it for 3 years at $75,000. That is not a small investment, but that is a 3-night festival with free concerts all over the city. If you've not gone, it makes Annapolis feel cool. We have concerts in our visitor center. The Bose actually sets up a whole studio, and people sit in there all day just to hear music. And these are up and coming artists. These are songwriters. These are people you've never probably heard of. But those experiences wouldn't happen if we didn't invite visitors into our town. We couldn't support that with residents alone. I couldn't support that as well. So I just want to really make sure that I'm really hitting on that. But I think you guys sort of got that. This is one of my favorite pictures that we've ever done. So I talked about sponsorship. So we do community sponsors. So Chesapeake Arts Center is a great draw for residents. It's a smaller draw for visitors, but it's an amazing facility. And if you've not been there, you should go. The director of that is amazing. The programs they have, the classes, all of it. But they do a community fair once a year. I think it's actually twice a year now. But in October, we sponsor it. You wouldn't necessarily think that we would, but we know the arts and tourism and quality of life are so aligned. We want to make sure that we have a really healthy arts community, and we want to support that. We'd also love it if they were able to do more programs, so we want to support that. But this, I think, is the perfect example. This is, what is it called? Severn Danza Park, right? So we wanted to bring in a championship, BMX championship. This is not my area of expertise, but what happens is you've got kids age 2. They told me to 81. I didn't see anyone 81 on a bike, but they told me that. But you have all these families come in, and these kids race, and these are the kids that race by running. That I think I'd want to do this one and not get on the pedals. I feel like I'd be closer to like not falling, but it's one of the coolest things. And when we did a site tour, they said this facility isn't good enough for a championship, this championship that we want to host. We said, well, what do we need to do? Like, you need to invest in this. So we put up $10,000. The state of Maryland put up $10,000 to the Maryland Stadium Authority. We invested $20,000 in this, and this championship comes back every 2 years. We switch off with a town in Virginia. And the reason I share that, it's 3 days of a championship, but the other 362 days of the year, that's for the community to use. So to me, that is the perfect example of drawing in visitors to make improvements here and then having it for the community. And so that's why I really wanted to highlight that one, because I think it's the best of what we do, and we can use that model on so many different things. I did want to spend some time talking about BWI because I'm excited about this. Have any of you been to the airport recently? I hope you saw our advertising. In fact, today I was at an event, and the head library, or the director of the library, Skip Auld, who's retiring, a great guy. If you don't know him, make sure that you give him a hearty handshake or a hug, whatever you're most comfortable with. He's done great work in the community. He was just at Public Libraries Association meeting in Minneapolis, and he went and showed me all the advertising that we have there. And I had to act surprised because, he was really proud of himself that he took all the pictures. But to be fair, I knew what they were because I've taken tours of it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is you all know, I know, the elected officials in the room know, BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport is in Anne Arundel County. It might be called Baltimore, Washington, but I just ignore those initials entirely. So I always welcome people to Anne Arundel County. The first meeting I had with our new director, not that new anymore, is Shanetta Griffin. I'm like, I am so glad you're in Anne Arundel County, right? Like we want not just our elected officials, our residents, all this. We want when people land at the airport to know, like, you've landed and you're in Anne Arundel County. So we did a huge buyout of the airport, of the advertising with Comcast, and then the airport, when they redid the AB connector, they came to us for images because we'd already made that investment. We were very nice and went to the other destination marketing organizations across the state for a few, but you're going to see ours dominate. And the reason we really wanted people to know they were landing here is, one, because we're really proud of our destination, but two, is because this year we are going to open a welcome center at BWI. And that's a really exciting thing for us. I talked a little bit about our welcome center in Annapolis. Part of our strategic plan is we have to make sure that we have the right footprint and facilities to serve the visitor where they are. 27 million people come through that airport. we have the opportunity to meet them, to welcome them, to make them understand how great we are as a destination and as a community. And then, to my neighbor's point from the very beginning, then tell them what to do. And I think that that's really exciting. So that is one thing that we're excited about. The other part that really goes with the airport is the international side of things. And I alluded to that before. Right now, traveler sentiment around the world is not great for people coming to the U.S. It's a fact. You see it in the numbers. It's the reality. We're not going to change that reality in our little destination of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. But in working with the Office of Tourism Development at a state level, they've asked us to be the lead for the Maryland International Marketing Program, which means we're the lead agent for for Maryland's international marketing. And we're excited about that. So we partnered with Baltimore and Frederick, our sister organizations, and the state office to come up now when things are absolutely at their worst in international, to come up with a really great plan and really start to execute that. So when that sentiment starts going up, we're going to be there ready to capture that and welcome people back into our area. So I'm excited about those things. And I think both the Welcome Center will be a great resource when you have friends and family come in town, and that international travel, if we're able to build that out, that will actually help you in your travels across the world. So I think that's exciting for air service development. I'll pause there. Any questions on that? I'm not going to go too much into sponsorships and attractions and all that because I think we've covered that. But I would just want to end with, and I'll sit up here and answer questions as long as you all want to ask me questions. But I really want to make it clear that we want to be in our organization a partner to our stakeholders, and we absolutely consider residents our stakeholders. The more you understand why we do what you do, you can talk to people about it, and you can actually help us figure out where we want to go forward. One of the things that I'm most excited about, and there are so many things to be excited about, America's 250, FIFA, World Cup. There are so many things in the world to be excited about. But we are embarking, along with the county and the city of Annapolis, on a tourism master plan. So it's really easy to plan 1-3 years out. We want to look 10, 20, 30 years out to look at how we can invest in our community for the residents and the visitors, so we can look at infrastructure, so we can plan to have that funded and really work with all of you to make that happen. So there are two things I'll ask of you. One is, when we open the BWI Welcome Center, you can all be my guests. You're all invited. And two, when we start to ask for community involvement around this tourism master plan, we'd really like your input. I think your location makes a whole lot of sense. And the fact that you asked me to share information, I'd love for you to share information with me as well. And so I want to end with one little thought. And I think a lot about why I do what I do and why I like my job so much. I really do. I hope it shows because I think I have the best job in the world, and every day is very different. But that feeling that you get when you're planning a trip, like that anticipation, that excitement is always just so exciting. I just planned a 2-week trip in Jefferson City, Missouri. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but I spent a lot of time planning, and ChatGPT helped me. It was fantastic. It does not replace your tourism bureau, though. Want to be clear. But that anticipation is really great. But what's even better than that, at least it is for me, when I get home and I'm comfortable and in my own bed. So like, it's great to go out, but it's even better to be home. And in this job, I get to represent this destination out, but I get to call Maryland home. So I think I have the best of everything. So with that, yeah, good.
You have a captured audience. I don't know how big it is, of contractors and consultants that come into this county. There's a lot of technical jobs that people fly in for on Monday and fly out Thursday night or whatever. Are you doing anything so they have stuff to do in the evenings and whatnot?
So I'll answer that question in sort of a sideways manner because I don't have a direct answer. So no, there isn't a program that we're working with exactly like that. I think it's a great idea, though, so it's something I would love to work with our employers on. I think that would be really interesting because we might even be able to convince some of those contractors to then move their families here and contribute that way as well. But no, we don't have a program like that. I think the closest thing I can say is we work with our military installations around Fort Meade, and just to make sure when families come here, they understand what the benefits of living here are, and their spouses and their families actually feel like there's something to do and they're not stuck on a base. So I think we could take that model to those employers and do something like that. I love that idea.
They're staying at the hotels that are around the airport and around the mills and all that. So.
And it might be a way that we just work with our hotel partners. So I know like BWI Marriott, right? They have a lot of air traffic folks and flight attendants that stay there. And I bet different hotels have different partners. So we could absolutely do that. I think it's a great idea. I'll credit you too. Any other questions? Yes, visitannapolis.org. And my email address is really easy, kp@visitannapolis.org. If you ever have ideas or questions or like, I heard this and it just doesn't seem right, don't assume the answer. And if I don't have it, I'll find it. At least I'll know the right people to go to. But I really thank you for asking great questions. I'll admit then, it's always a little different when you're talking to residents because you're not a regular audience, right? And so one of the things I did to prepare is I Googled, I chat GPT'd, I'm meeting with, this is my job, this is what I'm doing. Chat GPT, can you ask me the most difficult questions so that I can prepare for it? And there were some mean ones. I mean, so you all were very kind and I really appreciate that. And if you didn't ask any questions, I had a list of them that I was going to start going through. So I didn't have to do that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen Peronis. That was a wonderful presentation, and you do seem like the person who loves her job. So that's really great to meet somebody like you. Thank you very much for your presentation. So we are very fortunate to have actually, I guess, Councilman Smith has also joined us, but we're very fortunate to have actually a few candidates who are up for election in our upcoming primary, which is June 23rd, correct? And you know what? We did not discuss order, so I guess I'm just going to assign it. So first, well, just to let you know who's with us. First, we have Stephen Thomas, who's a Democratic candidate for House of Delegates. We also have Councilwoman Allison Pickard, who is a Democratic candidate for County Executive, and Rowena Nelson, who is a candidate for Circuit Court. And, well, you know, Councilman Smith, since you're here, you might as well come and say hi yourself. But why don't we start with you, Mr. Thomas, and then Councilwoman Pickard, Ms. Nelson, and then Councilman Smith. Does that sound good? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stephen Thomas, and I'm running as a Democrat for the Maryland House of Delegates. I'm retiring after 33 years as a police officer and working in public safety and being a community police officer. I actually went to school here. I am at North County. I'm on the Wall of Fame for my community involvement. So while I went here, it was Andover High School. I played football, basketball, and lacrosse, and then I went on and played lacrosse in college. As a police officer, I worked this area, this community. I worked in my first 8 years at Northern District, of which they were all on the midnight shift. But everyone didn't just know who I am, who I was. They actually know where I live because of growing up in the community. So I actually live 3 blocks in Woodlawn Heights away from my parents' house. I've lived in the same neighborhood my entire life. My wife, Elena, actually grew up across the street. So she traveled a little bit farther for our home from her house than I did for mine. But what I want to do is continue my service to the community from my experience as a police officer and a mental health officer. So for the last 10 years, I ran the crisis intervention team where we integrated the police department into the crisis system and being in the weeds every day, helping people with mental health, substance use, and responding to trauma. And I can carry on that public service. And I'm going to be short. I appreciate you letting me speak tonight. I'm actually one of a handful of subject matter experts for CIT International. And next month at the meeting when you're having the candidate night, I'm actually going to be in Pennsylvania teaching for them. And I committed to teach before I filed to run. With that, I really, I just want to say thank you for giving me the time to speak. I'll be here after the meeting. I don't want to take up too much time because I know you're going to hear from Pete and Allison as well, and the judge. So thank you.
Now what did I say? I said, Councilwoman Pickard, would you like to come up and talk to the group?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you also for accommodating my schedule. I'm Allison Pickard. I'm in my second term on the county council, and I believe when y'all are having candidates here, we have a public budget hearing, I believe, or we have somewhere we're supposed to be, and we couldn't be here tonight, that night. So thank you very much. For those of you who may not know me, I am well, let's see where to start. I grew up in a military family, and really that's where I gained those values of service and community. But my public service here in Anne Arundel County started like it does for a lot of moms in the PTA. And my children all went to Oakwood Elementary in Glen Burnie. And from there, it became the second home for my littlest one, who's now 16. And at our newest high school, he's now a sophomore at Severn Run High School. But I have two other children, one who's graduating college this year, and one that's a freshman in college who just recently graduated from Old Mill. So we are very familiar with Knight Nation. He played soccer there and was a STEM student there, and now he is studying biology and evolutionary biology. I don't even understand what he's studying, at Emory University. So we can be really proud of our public schools. They have certainly served my children well, and we are proud of the investment we've made over the last 8 years, especially having served on the council. But in between PTA and ending up running for county council, I was also on the Board of Education. So that was actually the Board of Education is where I really met and learned about the entire county. It was the first time I went to South County. It was probably the first time I was at North County High School or some of the high schools outside or schools outside of my own community. So serving on the Board of Education was just a sincere privilege. And when my term ended, we had an open seat on county council in District 2, and I worked really hard. I went out and I knocked the doors. I met my neighbors. I listened to their concern, and I was elected in 2018. And with that, we ushered in a Democratic majority on the council, and the current county executive, Stuart Pittman, and we've been able to do some great work together. We've made historic investments in education. We've passed some of our first fair housing laws. We have, in our first term and now in our second term, we have been doing all of the general development planning and comprehensive rezoning of the county. And we've been doing a lot with environmental protection, including creating our resilience authority. I made a decision a little while ago, about 18 months, 2 years ago, that with an open seat for the county executive role, that I wanted to take all of that experience and put it to work in the executive branch. And I, like Lieutenant Thomas, I'm not going to take up a ton of time, but some of the things I really appreciated. I got here a little early because I really wanted to hear my friend Kristen speak. From a visitor and tourism perspective, Anne Arundel County is a very cool place and a very unique place. Some of the things that we know up here in North County is we have some work to do with redevelopment and revitalization, and I have championed that work in the Glen Burnie area, working with the community there. It's been a little slow process, but it's an exciting process. And the coalition of support that I've built in this executive campaign includes our Congresswoman, Sarah Elfreth, and we have just partnered on a federal earmark to hopefully bring about $4 million to the Glen Burnie Town Center to completely revitalize the town center area that is publicly owned county property. And where I see us being able to bring life back into the town center, bring festivals to the town center, bring all of that vibrancy. We have great neighborhoods that surround the Glen Burnie Town Center. And if we just could get a little more investment, there's a place you can walk there, especially if we improve. We're waiting. I've got a crosswalk, a mid-block crosswalk from the free parking garage to the plaza that's been in design with SHA for about 4 years now. We did learn that now it's going to be next summer. So that's going to be Stephen Thomas's problem when they get elected to the General Assembly, because we all have fun with State Highways Administration. But there's a lot of opportunity for the next county executive to tackle, and economic development and revitalization is certainly a big part of that. It's been a passion project of mine, working with this administration to turn that corner in some of our older commercial corridors while maintaining that character and Main Street feel. We are working on Glen Burnie becoming a Main Street affiliate. There's lots of resources that open up from the state when we have these sort of designations, and there's some opportunities there. And that will, a rising tide lifts all boats. And when we invest in our communities, we invest in our families, and we bring jobs, family sustaining jobs. We all know that the cost of living is crushing, not just our lowest income, everybody. $73 to fill up my gas tank today. I nearly fell out. $4.19 a gallon. I don't think I've ever seen those prices, ever. It's been a long time. I know we had a moment, but I don't remember it being $4.19. And those things are really hurting. We have a lot going on. We really, the next 8 years, or 4 years, I should say, are bringing a lot of complexity with what's happening in our federal government. We have 120,000 residents that utilize Medicaid for their health insurance, and that has been cut. And we'll be working with the county executive in this month of May to make sure the health department is fully funded and can absorb the cost it's going to take to administer our Medicaid to 120,000 residents in Anne Arundel County. These are things that the next county executive is going to have to be able to tackle, and they're complex issues. And we're going to need leaders that have built those relationships and those partners from the local level to the state and to our federal level. And I'm excited to say that I have that a really strong coalition of endorsers in this campaign. But with that, I will just thank everybody for your time, and we'll take any questions if they're needed, or move on. Sure. Yeah. And again, thank you so much for accommodating the schedule.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for being here. Thank you for having us. I'm Rowena Nelson, and I'm running for Circuit Court Judge in Anne Arundel. A little bit about me. I have been a practicing attorney for the last 21 years. I am licensed to practice in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I would say about 80% of my cases are in Maryland, where I represent clients involved in family law cases, criminal law cases, and also bankruptcy cases. I was born and raised in Jamaica. A few of the things my family taught me was to work hard, to live with integrity, and also service. My mother has been a school teacher for the last 40 years. She continues to threaten to retire, but she's still teaching even today. So I've continued to be in a family that's filled with service. I want to continue in that line. And the reason why I'm running for Circuit Court Judge is that after, it'll be 21 years this May, I've noticed a couple things, especially in Maryland, where I have the bulk of my cases. One, Maryland has ongoing judicial issues involving juvenile justice that needs serious reform. Two, there are a high number of case logs and cases that are not being heard in a timely fashion, and it really has very little to do with the individuals in the courtroom, but we need a little bit more push, and maybe Allison or Pete may be able to help with that one day. But high number of case backlogs, a large number of individuals who are currently self-representing because they cannot afford to hire a lawyer because they don't have the money. These are issues that we have to address as a state, not just Anne Arundel, but my focus will be here. Three key things that I would like to bring to the bench. I think in the last few minutes I've explained generally the issues in the judicial system, but what would I bring to the bench individually? One, respect for the law. In order for us to live as a civilized society and one that's orderly, the law has to be respected. And what does that look like? That looks like a judge who's able to explain in a fashion that litigants can understand what's happening to them. Most times when people are in court, they're experiencing some of the most difficult times. And the court will bring some type of clarity and conclusion to whatever issues they're facing. So the law has to be respected, and a judge not only needs to know the law, but a judge needs to be able to administer the law in a way that's fair, clear, and also precise. Two, respect for the individual. In my 21 years, I've noticed litigants who are sometimes frustrated. The cases aren't being called timely. Sometimes judges are not even on the bench for 1 hour, 2 hours, and the litigant just has to sit there and wait. It's very helpless. No one is explaining why the docket may be behind, so the individual needs to be respected. And two, respect for time. There are a high number of case backlogs, but I think with technology, if there's a push for it, the cases can be handled in a more expedient way.
Check. There it is. Right, I feel like I should do like a song or something like that. Those who know me, Pete Smith. I am the current councilman for District 1 here in Anne Arundel County. Have been serving this county and this district for quite some time. Was appointed actually initially in 2012, about 3 months after I came off active duty. So I've been in the reserves the last 14 years. And I've spent on the 14th, April 14th, will be my 28th year serving in the Marine Corps. And so I'm truly blessed to be able to wear this cloth because I think it's really given me a path for the future that I think every sort of citizen should be after, and that's serving your country and just doing something positive to make sure it's uplifted. I have 2 kids. My daughter is 20. She's at UMBC, majoring in computer science. She interned I work at NSA, in U.S. Cyber Command for the last, off and on since 2003. It's where their mom works. And my daughter interned there her senior year in high school, and her goal is to come back there once she graduates from UMBC. So the intelligence community has been like our livelihood. Quite frankly, mine has been more on the programmatic side. I was a technician for a while there, but then I moved into the money sector. So I am grateful for Fort Meade. It has been a blessing for me, especially for a kid who practically was homeless his senior year in high school, having to find a place with his aunt to live in her basement. So to come from that beginning and then end up here, it's pretty amazing, and I'm grateful for that. I too am seeking a seat to replace the incoming county executive position that's vacated by Stuart Pittman, him being term limited. And so I too am one of those individuals that is running for that seat. I'm running because I bring a wealth of experience, not just at the county level, that's working at the federal level. I was a civilian, a federal employee for about 8 years. And then the last 6 years, because of the Hatch Act, became a contractor so that they wouldn't have any issues with me being in office, quite frankly. So that has been the joy of my life. I've also worked at the state level and helping various candidates from a policy standpoint, and here locally. I've been involved in just about every election as a volunteer or here recently as a candidate for the last 20 years in Anne Arundel County because I care about the county in this district. I have learned a lot from being an elected official, especially when it comes to Linthicum. If you do not represent the views of Linthicum, you cannot be in elected office here in this area. And so I know yes. This is a representative government. And so that's why even when we were doing land use last year with comprehensive rezoning, every single meeting, I made sure I came back to this community to make sure the leadership was okay with those decisions that were being made. I got spanked once from Linthicum, and I don't like that belt at all, quite frankly. And so I just want you to know you have some super advocates here in this community. And what you care about and what I've learned over certainly the last decade is protecting what you have here. And you don't want to see that go. I want to see 50 years from now, the same communities that exist here are here for your children as you pass your house down to your loved ones so that they can enjoy this community because it is a lovely community and you want to protect that. And so I understand that. I've heard it 1,000 times over the last, certainly the last 10 years, and I'm going to be committed to that. So folks are asking, what are you doing? Why do you want to be county exec? Economic development. I love education. I love the environment. I love everything, even public safety. But we cannot do any of it if you don't have resources to pay for it, hands down. And so I do not want to raise your taxes. I've said that publicly. I do not. There is an opportunity for us to raise revenue on the economic and economy side of the house. So you're going to see me focus on that to make sure we bring in that additional revenue. I've talked to some of you all and publicly about making sure we build a trade high school or expand Cat North, where it is graduating and pumping out individuals who are gifted in trades so they can go right into the workforce. I didn't go to college right after high school. I went in the military, and they gave me 3 meals and a cot, and I was good. I was squared away. Went to Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan. If you've ever heard, I didn't even know there was a place until I went to it. And I tell folks, I was shot at, bombed, all these things. And I wound up, when I graduated from college night school, I went to OCS, Officer Candidate School, and being in all of those different places, not one scratch. And then I go to OCS in Virginia, and I break my ankle and my leg. Walking in the woods by all, it was crazy. But that taught me a lot about character and what it takes to make sure this county is going to be taken care of. So I don't want to speak too long because I know you guys are on a schedule. You want to keep that tight timeline, but you're going to see me pump into Anne Arundel County economics side of the house like the Marine that I am. I'm the only one that's bringing literally over $600 million in private investments to Anne Arundel County. I've already laid the foundation with some entities that want to invest in private government. Over $600 million they have committed to bringing in Anne Arundel County. What I want to do with that money, infrastructure. We already talked about roads, and we're going to continue to grow because as long as we're continuing to grow as a population, we're going to be growing as a county. And so, but I don't want to make it painful for you as we grow. So I want to make sure those roads and sidewalks are put in place. We need resources to do that. And so I have private investors who want to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into Anne Arundel County to make this county what it is. That's why I want to help with that trade high school. You're going to see me investing and articulating a athletic complex because we got a lot of families here who have children So you're going to see us pour into a regional 500, 600,000 square feet indoor athletic complex that on 130 acres of land by Arundel Mills Mall. The land it's a perfect location, and there's some private investors who already want to pay for that. That's going to bring in additional revenue. That's going to help fund education, public safety, and environment, and other things. And the last thing I want to talk about is those are just a few of the things that we're bringing to the table. But my mom had a stroke about a year and a half ago, and I really thought that I was going to just get out of this because she really needed. She was like, she couldn't even move when it happened, and she's now retained about 85% of what she was before, and so she's able to cook and take care of herself, which is good. But I learned then, just as I know now, unlike if you have a child and you got 8 months to prep for it, elder care and seniors, like overnight, it can happen. And so you really, as a young family, have to be prepared for them. So I want to make sure we have resources to help those families be successful when they get to that stage in their life. And so part of that private investment is to pour into some things here in this county that are going to allow some of these families to be taken care of when it comes to resources, indoor facilities specifically. So I can't wait to when we get on the be able to articulate how we're going to pay for all of this, because there's a pathway to do that as well. And I've looked at that, and I'm excited about the future of this county. I want to take that Marine experience, the last 28 years of federal government, certainly local government, my volunteerism, and literally pour into this county like no county executive that I've worked with 4 different county executives, and I've seen them and how they've worked in those positions. And so I know some of the best practices that work with them as well as other jurisdictions, and I want to incorporate that here in Anne Arundel County. So thank you for allowing me to represent you all for the time that I have represented you. I'm looking forward to continue to represent you in a different capacity. And I would love to have your vote on June 23rd here in Anne Arundel County for county executive. So thank you. And I will turn the mic back over.
Thank you, Councilman. So does anyone have any questions for our candidates? Glenn?
This is for the county executive position, since Allison's not going to be here next month. Stuart Pittman has wanted to, look, this is just a personal way of explaining it, solve the America's housing crisis right here, the whole crisis here in Anne Arundel County, it seems like. And we're getting about 750 homes in a relatively small area along Nursery Road are planned for development. Not sure that's like we should be, Linthicum should bear the burden of solving the nation's affordable housing crisis. I just want to get her, because again, she's not going to be here next month to talk about that. I'd like to get her feeling about all that and what's going on here.
Yeah, she should come up here. But we should also mention that there is currently a moratorium to kind of
there is. We've kind of lucked out, and we may have 5 or 7 years or more to. Yeah.
All right. Sure. Well, let's first start with the housing crisis, or the affordability crisis is real, and the housing shortage is real, not just in Anne Arundel County, but in the state. And all those folks, like my own children that have just graduated high school and are still in high school, we know from our studies that have been done at the state level with our comptroller that we have, it used to be that retirees were leaving the state of Maryland. Now we have young adults and families leaving the state of Maryland because of affordability. But we still have jobs. So while, my neighborhood in Millersville is built on an old tobacco farm, our economy has changed. Our North County has changed since we were formed as a county so many hundreds of years ago, whenever that was. But we've done all that planning with Plan 2040 in our first term and all of our region plans to address where housing should go and where it shouldn't go, and where we're targeting redevelopment over greenfield development. But we know we need housing. We have jobs. Hopefully, we're going to keep those jobs that are around the National Business Park. What we need to make sure we do is use the regulations we have in place, all the guardrails, and make sure they're applied with fidelity. And then we need to make sure that we're investing, like Mr. Smith said, in our infrastructure. While also trying to, you've got Linthicum is a lovely community, but West Nursery Road is not is a big thoroughfare now with hotels and job opportunities, and so it's different. It's changed, right? So we have to figure out how to balance all of that while also making sure that our young adults actually stay here. We want them to stay. I think we want young families. We want people to be able to stay, and if there isn't housing, they're going south. So maybe that's not one of the things we've done on the council and with this administration over the last 8 years is we've introduced housing choice. So we're not just building large apartment buildings and large single family homes. There's all these things, all these dwelling types that people want. We need housing for seniors to downsize into, master on the main, one level living where you can age in place. We need smaller home ownership options so people can get into the market so they can enjoy the American dream. You can't open a newspaper or listen to the radio or turn on the TV without hearing about this generation is the first generation that will most likely not do better than their parents. That's terrifying for me. Those are my children we're talking about. And so my life is here in Anne Arundel County. When they graduate college, are they going to be able to live here? Or are they going to be so cost burdened that they're never going to get out of a high rental unit? And we have to be able to talk about supply. We have to talk about stability in the current market, and we have to talk about the subsidy. We're doing okay. We've been doing better with creating, with our LIHTC projects and things in different parts of the county, building some subsidized housing. But we are missing out on homes and home ownership opportunity for young adults and downsizing seniors. If we don't have places for folks to leave their family home so they can downsize into, but still be near their grandchildren and still be a part of the community, we're not churning the market. Does that, so no one, like my family home will be too big for my husband and I at some point, and we'll want to go somewhere, maybe a condo, maybe a smaller, maybe somewhere closer to the town center where we can walk. And then another family moves into my home. But that market is not happening right now. But we do need to, that might not make you happy, but there are realities about the housing market that are real.
Thank you for that. I did have a question, though. There's been a lot of talk about developing in the area, but there's been very little talk, or at least in the plans that I've seen, about improving things like 295. If you ever have worked at Fort Meade, like Pete Smith was talking about, from here to Fort Meade is a nightmare going and coming back. And there's no other routes that can handle the traffic now. If you're talking about bringing in 700 units just to this area, I don't know how we're going to manage the traffic.
Well, so when we talk about traffic, we first have to acknowledge that 40% of the cars on our roads aren't from Anne Arundel County residents. They're coming through. But 295 is a U.S. highway, right? So we definitely, when we talk about infrastructure, there's impact fees being paid, there's road improvements being made. There are. There are. Some of the things but it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. But if we can't just stop. We can't just say we're done here.
No, I'm okay with that. I would like to see if they have plans for development for homes, they should also have plans for road improvement.
Sure.
And I don't see a lot of that. I see a lot more plans for homes than I do road improvement.
Well, maybe we need to talk more about the road improvements that are happening, because they're happening. Maybe not as fast as you'd like, but
Yeah, I think just to follow up to his point, I think a lot of it from the communities, it ends up being retroactive. Like they did all the overbuilding in Brooklyn Park. You see it every day now on 695. You try to drive through there and it's all backed up onto 695. They never improved the thoroughfare for 695. And the same thing happened when Arundel Mills went in. As soon as that went in, 100 couldn't deal with the traffic that went in because they used traffic studies from the 70s. So I think to his point, there's not a lot of proactive build before the new stuff goes in. So we end up having to deal with the congestion until it irons out, and then that retroactive play kind of makes everything miserable in the community in the meantime.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of traffic up in the north part of the county especially with the Key Bridge collapse, and it's redirecting traffic. But the county's not going to. First of all, we have an intersection of state roads and county roads, so we have a lot of push-pull with our state and county maintenance. We are investing in our state roads to make sure that I think it's something like 6 of the 10 or 6 of the 9 state priority projects are in Anne Arundel County, and they're in Anne Arundel County because we're putting our county revenue towards state road improvements. Doesn't happen fast, but we also don't build out a road before there's people living on it. It's a chicken or the egg, right? Like we're not, right? That's not how it works. Does that make sense? But I don't need to be the only one in the hot seat. Mr. Smithkin is welcome to join in the conversation. But I understand. I sit in the same traffic that you do. I mean, traffic is real. It's real. And as we invest in, we have to invest in transit, but this is all economic development and making sure that we have the resources to pay for it. But we're not, there's this misconception that we're growing. Like our population growth is less than 1% every year. So houses that are being built are for people who are already here. Does that make sense? I mean, we don't have explosive population growth in Anne Arundel County right now. We absolutely do not.
The problem with Anne Arundel County is it's a blessing and a curse. We have Fort Meade, we have the Naval Academy, we have all of these industries that are job centers for the state of Maryland. In fact, the state of Maryland has about 8 economic centers. 5, 6 of them are literally right here in Anne Arundel County. 4 of them are in the northern part of the county. And so it draws people from throughout the state and throughout the region. And so the key is like what they did with Columbia, for example. Columbia was a planned community. 50 years ago, I think it was Walsh, whatever his name was, bought a bunch of land, and they sort of, say it again, what was his name? Rouse. So I was close. And so they planned that community for decades. So you knew as they hit each population milestone, which level of development was going to open up to that new sector of population. We got burdened with, not burdened, it's a blessing as well, with Fort Meade, with BRAC, base realignment and closure, when it brung all of those jobs in. So there was this mad rush in the late 2000s to add more housing here. And so the problem was when the housing market took a turn for the worse, it froze all that development until that was approved, until around 2015, 2016, when you saw it over the last decade being built out. It was approved 20 years ago. They just didn't build because they didn't want their product to take less of a financial loss than if it was today. And so you've seen a lot more development happening over the last 10 years, certainly because of that situation. But you're absolutely right. I think we should change how we do developments. We should build infrastructure and plan out our communities based off of population goals. If we know we're going to be growing at a rate of 3% a year, whatever that number is, we've grown. We're about 610,000 citizens live in Anne Arundel County. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we were just right around 500,000. So we've grown about 100,000+ people over the last 25 years. But our housing market has not grown that. We only approve about 2,500 permits for houses every single year. So that's how many houses, and that includes apartments, the whole shebang. It's not just single family houses. It's everything. So we average around 2,500 a year, but we graduate 6,000 students out of our school system every year. So you got 6,000 people going into the workforce, indoor college, and you got about 2,500 of houses, not including the growth from the economic side of the house that brings people in. The key is for us to focus on how do we plan these communities out in advance so we don't make your quality of life worse as we continue to grow. And so that's what I would be focused on. Sir.
So my question is in a little different area, and it's a general question. Anyone can answer it. Maybe 10 years ago or so, we started seeing, more red lights, more red lighted cameras, and now they're all over the place. And there's other ways. I guess these school buses have a certain light that they can get you to, and big fines. So my question is, there's a lot of revenue that's being generated. What specifically is that revenue being used for?
So I'll try to be quick. We actually don't have a ton of red light cameras. We just implemented that over the last couple of years. The schools have been the first, the speed cameras that you see, the speed light camera.
Any form of, be careful with my words here, any way to create a digital ticket? I don't remember them in the past at all.
Right. It's only been in the last couple of years.
Well, I'm not quite sure about that. But in either case, the question is, what specifically are being done with those funds?
So I would say the revenue that's being generated by the red light cameras is very nominal. It's not significant. We have a $2.5 billion budget. Last year, and I've said this before, we grow about $80 million organically on average over the last 25 years. So if you go back to 2000 and you look at what the budget was and you look today, our budget has grown about $80 million every single year. The red light cameras or whatever speed cameras that you have in the county is a very tiny piece of that organic revenue. And so the Howard County, and I've said this before, Howard County has the exact same budget of us as we have, and they have half the population. So we do not have a significant a budget. Prince George's County, almost $5 billion. Baltimore City, $6 billion. Baltimore County, and $6+ billion. Howard County has 300,000 citizens. They passed a $2.4 billion budget last year. We have a 600,000 citizens, $2.5 billion budget last year that we passed. Our revenue is and budget is not exorbitant, especially compared to other jurisdictions of like size and or populations. And so the goal is for us to grow that so we can actually enhance some of the stuff in our area.
Yeah, to get more specific about your exact question, the stop arm cameras, if you are not obeying the rules around school buses, we that was Bill 1-20. I was a sponsor. We passed that, and we got state enabling legislation so that we could do that because there was this very serious uptick in both accidents relating to kids getting on and off of school buses in communities because people were not obeying all of the rules around how you're supposed to comport yourself in your vehicle around a school bus. And so those are meant to be, that's a big ticket. It's a $250 ticket. And they are monitored by, it is a camera ticket, but they are monitored at the police. So there's some that are like, oh, that's not they see how it happened and how you flagged that camera, and it is reviewed by an individual before it is sent to your address. That and our speed cameras that are those little gray boxes that can be moved. They are mobile. They are placed, and sometimes we as council members, because of complaints of speeding on our residential roads and some of our lower our 25-mile-an-hour roadways, people are speeding. Your neighbors, your residents, maybe even you. Yes, I've gotten one of those before, and they're there to be a deterrent. So the $40 ticket, I honestly do not know the total amount of. They are relatively new in the last couple of years. I should know. We should. You think that's how much we're, but it's going right back into the general fund and it's not earmarked for something specific. It's helping to pay for our public safety officers and the way we run the county. It's not making us a lot of money. Yes.
Speaking of public safety officers, are we still underpopulated on them in terms of what we're authorized to have? And
yes.
How many we actually have, and what are we doing about that? You want to grow, you want to add more homes, you want to add more people, but you can't staff the public safety officers.
Well, we're
firefighters
authorized at about 800, 808, 809. But you're right. We are not. Our academies were finally starting to turn a corner where we are actually getting law enforcement cadets into our academies. We're turning a corner. We're running at least 2 a year now, and we're up to about 25 in each class, which has been we have a national shortage of people wanting to go into law enforcement, and so that we're hoping to see that. We're hoping to turn out academy grads. And we have done a lot as far as raising starting salaries, improving pension benefits. We have done a lot this year on lateral. We are trying to attract lateral moves into our police department by enhancing pensions and other benefits and signing bonuses. I don't know if y'all remember the school bus shortage, but we were all the different counties were competing for school bus drivers. We're kind of trying to do the same thing with police officers, but we absolutely, the next county executive absolutely is going to have a very strong plan to build our resources, our human resources in both police and fire. And it is going to be incredibly challenging. We don't have the same recruitment issues in the fire department, but we absolutely do have recruitment issues in our police department. Lieutenant Thomas can probably talk something about that. And it's not an Anne Arundel County issue. It's a national issue right now that we're going to have to work towards building that budget so that we can afford to continue to staff. We just went to 12-hour shifts in the police department to try to deal with overtime issues. And that, to me, we should be working towards a 10-hour shift model that is the most, what would you say, a best practice in the industry. We need to get there. We need to get there indeed. But we're going to have work to do. That is public safety investment is going to be a top priority, I would assume, from both either the Pickard or Smith administration.
And you'll notice that even 20 years ago, we had about 714 or 718 police positions. We're 809. In that same period, we've probably grown like 80,000 people. So we have not kept pace with government services that should be. Public safety is probably paramount to when it comes to government. And as we're trying to hire people and people like Lieutenant Thomas are retiring, it makes it hard. And so we really should be about 1,200 police officers. That's what we should be at based off our population. But that's going to be really hard. We could authorize that, but you can't even recruit that because our standards, we will not change or lower our standards just to meet those numbers. And so it's always going to be hard to achieve that.
There are challenges with hiring police. The process, it takes time to do background checks. So going through that, but one of the unique things we did in Anne Arundel County was that we started hiring officers. So years ago is like when I started 30 years ago, everyone in a class started. So my hire date was October 18th, and everyone in my lateral class started that day. What was happening is we were actually working and through Officer Wellness, preparing officers to get through the PT test, preparing them for when they get in the academy, and actually starting with mental health as well. With that, they would be waiting for their start date and then get picked up by another agency. So we invested in them and lost them. So what we're doing now as an agency is actually we're able to hire them prior to going to before the academy, doing a meaningful job. And then when the academy starts, we already have them so someone else doesn't steal them. And some of the other things is, and we do better than most, but we need to do far better, is officer wellness. And for the traumas that we experience as first responders, just like Pete can share stories in the military, and it's not that is what did we do to help ourselves with our family struggles? And I could go on for hours about that. And they've both heard me many times.
So, well, I have another question on another issue, but back to that though, is that I and another board member have in the past tag teamed and gone to the monthly police meetings. And in the past, what they have said is that a lot of it is that it comes from the top down. Because if you have the state, basically, the more that they tie their hands, the less that they, the less authority they have to enforce the law. So, just from my, little perception, maybe that's where some of the mental health issues are also coming from. Because who wants to be a police officer if you know that your hands are going to be tied all the time and that the criminals have much more freedom than you do to do things? And I'm not saying, police, brutality and stuff like that. I'm just talking about enforcing the law. So that's why I was very happy when the body cameras, came out, because it's for them too. So that way, maybe, maybe the top down and the authority, or, with the juveniles, that maybe people who are so busy passing the laws, but they aren't seeing what's really going on the street, maybe they can finally see what's actually happening. So that's what I was, that's just my input for the police thing, just, based on what I've heard from the meetings.
So I would say I was in patrol 19 years.
Yes.
Before I was in CIT.
Okay.
And officers have a lot of discretion in enforcing laws. And I will say that I've never had my hands tied with that. Officers, it's just like if you get pulled over or anyone gets pulled over for speeding, the officer has full discretion if they want to write a ticket, if they want to give a warning or a zero and things like that. So, and we could have a discussion about that, but I can tell you no one's hands are tied in enforcing the law. And actually we have, and I can go into a lot of the root causes, and that's where as a police agency, Anne Arundel County is in the front as a leader in diversion programs, actually addressing the root cause of behavior that can lead to get people in trouble.
I know, I'm just thinking, like, as an officer, you expend all this energy, and then you have a 14-year-old who's been arrested 13 times, in and out this coming. I think after a while, like any job, I think that will get really frustrating when I have expended all my energy and, I do what I can and then they're right back out.
That's not the trauma. The trauma I'm referring to.
I would think that would be. I think that would be very frustrating. Like,
no, it does.
Am I accomplishing anything?
When you actually do proper diversion and address the root cause, and that is a problem when there is a revolving door. The trauma I'm referring to is the horrific scenes the first responders go
True.
through.
Yes, that's true.
When you're responding to acts of violence, and I don't want to get in and traumatize everyone here, but with it, and that's the hard part. And then when you start having, when our worlds collide, when you're responding to incidents that you're having the same challenges in your own personal life, and that's where, but that's again, they've heard me talk about it, and I could go on for a long time.
Oh, no. I'm not looking at my watch for that. But my quick question is that in the past, I've actually looked into thinking that this would, so housing thing. I have always felt that Linthicum would benefit so much better if any of the housing development that would happen would be for the 55 and older, because we here in Linthicum, if you see all of the residents, a lot of these residents, we've been here for decades and decades and decades. And, I think a lot of us would like to stay, but it's very hard to retire in the state. And so, of course, that's a whole nother subject. But my question is that the few times that I've asked about, just ask anybody who I thought was a good source about it, about like, you know, why can't we just have 55 and older? Like, okay, the airport district, you know, all these townhomes and all these condos going up. 55 and older would be awesome. In fact, I even thought that, you know, if we had to rezone and redo the Linthicum shopping center, you know, and okay, if we're going to have to modernize it, why don't we modernize it with like the shops on the bottom, but then you have the 55 and older housing because people want to stay. And all I kept hearing was, well, the developers don't get as much money for that if they do the 55 and older. And that just, okay. Well, what if our area wants the 55 and older?
Look, I'm
It's
a champion.
either us
If we
or the
can-
money. So I guess.
Yeah, if we can encourage builders to build it, in Two Rivers, for example, there were communities when that first got developed or at least approved decades ago, probably like 15, 20 years ago, there was a portion of that that was actually dedicated to senior housing for 55 and older or whatever the age is. And then, you know, sometime in the future, it reverted, and some of those housing were then opened up to the masses because that's where the demand was. And so it really does. It can have a good partnership, but it really is the market that drives
Like
it.
down in Two Rivers, I think, was it Two Rivers, Crofton? They were all set up for 55 and older. Well, yeah, because I have friends who live down there, and they were 55 and older. Then all of a sudden,
And a section of it still is.
poof,
Yeah.
it changed.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Smith is correct. It is market driven, but there are 55 and older communities being built. They're absolutely being built. And there's a market for
I'm just
it.
saying that our area.
But you're looking
I
for it
think
for
our
your
area would benefit. Our immediate Linthicum Heights area. I don't know. You know, Brooklyn Park is different. Ferndale could be different, but you know, but for Linthicum Heights, I think that really would be, you know, that is a benefit. But it seems like we're not really listened to when it comes to, hey, let's throw up all these townhouses and homes that are not going to help us, but overcrowd our schools.
When we did the Region 1 plan, isn't there some sector planning coming to this area with the Office of Planning?
The parcel is just not ideal. It's a little small acreage by the railroad. It's a very narrow land mass. It's not ideal for any sort of mass development. But there are we could potentially have one here in on the hill, the rubble land. Yeah, one in Plum Creek. Yeah, Dover Road.
But
Dover Road, we potentially have some. We can ask them if they need it's a partnership between the developer who builds it and then the county government. They don't have to if they don't want to. We just have to incentivize them to make it.
But I think there is, you know, now that we're on our last region plan and finally we will have comprehensively rezoned the whole county. And in those individual region plans, there are 9 regions in the county. I do think in Region 1, there's going to some sector plans, which is going to involve the community, which is my point. It's going to involve the community getting together and kind of like what we did in the Glen Burnie Town Center area and working together to create a vision for how you'd like to see that area evolve. So that's all coming. That work is coming as we get through the process. No, I don't mean. Yeah. Okay. But Pete was right. It's developers are going to build to the market, right? So it's a little different.
So, Lori, remember there was the whole stakeholder thing and then the whole Region 1 planning, but then what was written into the plan was that they changed with the land use for the commercial area, you know, how it was designated a transit-oriented development. No, that's still a transit-oriented development area. But what happened was, remember when we were, with OPZ, and we were kind of making everybody mad. But what ended up happening was, what they put in the in the plan was any future development needs to be, what they were recommending was mixed use, but kind of the least aggressive mixed use option. And they specifically stated that any rezoning, because they changed the land use to mixed use, but the area is still zoned as it previously was zoned, there'd have to be rezoning in order for anything to happen. But that before that happened, there needs to be community sector planning. Yeah. And that would involve discussions with the community. So that part hasn't happened yet. I think it would probably be sort of spurred by somebody buying, or the area actually being.
This administration is tied up with the last Region 5. I think any other land use studies will probably be in the next administration. It's just there's no time to initiate those.
But you're right in that the property is owned by someone now and is being occupied in some way. And until there's someone wants to sell their property or to make a change, it's not like the county comes in and says, you're no longer PJ's Coffee, we're going to make you something else. That's not how the world works, right? So, but as change happens, there is more stakeholder engagement coming, which I think is really fun. And really, I think it's really good for the community, because what you were talking about before, like retail on the bottom, and then, that Main Street feel, that is what I think is ideal to keep Linthicum in that. Yeah. But we don't build it. The county government doesn't build stuff.
So I'm probably speaking from an incredibly different perspective. I'm a little bit of an outsider, I think, for a lot of reasons. One, I'm probably one of the youngest homeowners in this room. I'm a recent transplant to Linthicum. I'm originally from the Midwest, spent a decade living in Chicago, have a very different mentality for like what community structure looks like. That also,
where in Chicago?
Oh gosh, I lived all over the city. I started in the Loop, Little Italy, jumped around Portage Park, Albany Park, all over the place, north and south side. And one of the biggest reasons why my husband and I planted roots here in Linthicum specifically was the allure of public transit, which I know is a very hot and very discussion here. But after having lived here for around a year and a half, I have found the public transit structure, while large, to be lacking in certain arenas, specifically safety and reliability. It's hard to compare any public transit structure to something like New York City or Chicago. But I found that to be a very attractive asset. And that's not something that, I think that's something that a lot of people in my age demographic are much more interested in seeing investments in. And, I hear people talking about a desire to not increase housing here because it creates additional traffic on the roads. But, that's where I see public transit taking more of a step in. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about, are there plans to increase the safety, increase the reliability? I mean, I just did jury duty a week or two ago over in Annapolis, and I tried to take public transit home. That was quite an adventure. I ended up giving up after making it to Cromwell. But I got most of the way. And this is, for me, I can drive, I have a license, everything. But I love public transit, and I want to hear just a little bit more about, what that looks like. And also, as someone who is a recent homeowner, I feel like quite the anomaly in my age demographic. I'm the only person on my block that is in their 30s, basically. Pretty much everyone else is 50s and up. So I'm very curious to know, how does Linthicum plan to, what is Linthicum going to be looking like in 30 years? Who's going to be buying the houses. I mean, it's a miracle that I was even able to afford a house in the neighborhood that I was living in.
Well, I think if you're willing to share your contact, we can send. You've seen some of the state is about to invest, what is it, 1.4 billion into the improvements in the light rail. So improvements to the light rail from Cromwell all the way up is starting to happen, and that's really exciting because you hit it right on the head with safety and reliability is an issue in creating. We do have a partnership coming with the state at Cromwell that is in the works to be a transit-oriented development community there at the end. But with that, we need to make sure that the rail part of it is reliable and clean and safe. But the residential, the 9 acres or so there that will be the parking lot that will be turned into residential will be part of a separate project. But the cleaning up the light rail, fortunately, it is a state issue, so you need to get to know your state representatives. But we all work together, and it's way overdue for the state to invest in the light rail.
Yeah, I sincerely agree. And I just also want to say, as someone who flies in and out of BWI a lot, it's a real shame that the light rail is the first impression that many people have of Maryland, and the lack of the lack of reliability of the light rail. I mean, I can show up and it's 20 minutes. I can show up and it's 45 minutes. You don't even know if the timer is going to be like lying to you, and there's nowhere to sit unless you go outside, and then there's smokers. Like, it's just that's like the first impression that so many people have. It feels like people are immediately forced to drive. And, I was even thinking earlier about Yes, and and even things like how I remember reading about how there's like a bus that can go to, I think, the mall in Annapolis now from the BWI, which is fantastic. But even things like Google Maps won't even tell you that stuff. So like I've had to figure it out just by having my finger to the pulse and being in the Linthicum Facebook group and everything. But like, I don't know, I just feel like there's like a major disconnect between that information even being available to the general public.
Hence the reason I was talking about, if we don't grow our economy, we don't grow our resources for the county government, it's really hard to pay for these other things. I used to be a lifeguard at North Avenue Beach in Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago, lived there, and then went to the military. So I know all about the city. The problem is that Anne Arundel County, and I'm going to always be truthful, no matter how hard it is to hear, it has been a suburb for the entirety of its existence. And so it has never been a Baltimore City. It has never been a DC that had a concentration of people. Baltimore City, for example, 40 years ago, had 1.5 million people that lived in it. So you can concentrate the mass of citizens around a public safety, a public infrastructure, transportation infrastructure that was there to sustain itself. Since they've lost that mass of people that have moved all into the suburbs, now their public transportation is lacking because you don't have the same tax base that funded that to its existence. We in the suburbs in Anne Arundel County, we've been growing, but not growing to 1.5 million, where you get this concentration of mass of people that can reliably use those and or pay into the county tax base so that we can fund more buses or trains. I will say there are folks, this community, specifically Linthicum, like with the Maglev, for example, there have been opportunities in the past to bring in sort of transportation sort of venues here. But you got to remember, this county is not the same as DC, not the same as Chicago. So it is evolving, but it's not there yet. We're taking baby steps, but we have to do it in a way that's not going to still make it painful for the folks that are here. But at the same time, maybe we find more revenue for the buses, because you're right. If you got to wait 2 hours for a bus, no one's going to ever use it. Right. And it's not reliable. And so you're going to force people to get on cars. But even getting bus stops in neighborhoods, got to tell you, there is friction even when it comes to that. Folks will come out and rally and say, don't put that bus stop in my neighborhood. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've felt it. And I'm just telling you that it exists. It's a headwind that we face. But it's about baby steps and making sure that if that does happen with a bus stop, that neighborhoods feel like we have the public safety piece under control, that there's ample policing in the communities walking up and down the roads, and then they won't care about the bus stop. But if we don't take care of the necessities, the basics, it makes it harder for the citizens to accept it and for the political will to make it happen. So
I really appreciate hearing your perspective, and I hope you find other like-minded friends and advocates and neighbors who can actually find their way into council chambers and the state house and places to be a balancing voice in the community.
Absolutely. I'll
You're
tell
hired.
my friends.
So does that mean you're willing to extend light rail all the way to Annapolis to help her get to jury duty? Specifically to go through Saverna Park?
That I don't even
Just
need
saying.
to answer, because that I don't think that will ever happen. But a bus, I think retrofitting, it's very hard to retrofit a suburban county with transit. But reliable, efficient, predictable bus service, clean, safe, would be, I know I have 3 children who are of driving age that don't quite drive. Well, the oldest one sort of drives, but she shouldn't. And so she's in a town in college that she doesn't need to, and she spent a year in Paris where she didn't need to drive. And now she's coming home, I think, this summer, and she's not driving my car.
No, I was just going to make a comment. One, I appreciate all your perspective coming into the community. And this has been kind of more of like a comment, especially since you guys are running for new positions. Just do whatever you can to help the community feel heard. Like, I think you'll find opposing views on wanting more public transit in our area, because I would say there's probably a lot of people in this room who probably argue or scream their voices gone, including myself. I haven't been to one of these meetings in over 10 years because I ran out of breath on some of the issues we've had with securing the light rail and properly having police around it. So if you can, anything you can do, and I think I saw some nodding around just securing the public transportation we have, because I'd say whenever they've closed it and we've switched to buses, things actually improve because people check tickets. You can't just wander onto the a bus with a TV. So, and you think that's fun? It's calm. No,
Does that really happen?
I was very young when the light rail opened, and I watched all my friends' bikes go onto the light rail from people taking them because there was nobody policing it, and that's one of the very core things that would go a long way. So, anything you can do to champion the voices here would be incredible, and obviously, you'll get more votes, and when we feel heard and we see change coming from it, because it's next generation coming into the community. It's a lot of us are getting tired, but anyway. More commentary than anything else.
And I'm not necessarily expecting us to have like a clone to the Chicago L by any means. I would much more prefer to advocate for reliability and safety than expansion, because I think one of the things that attracted me to come in the first place and to move here, I actually was in Howard County before renting, before we moved here, was the already existing infrastructure. So just, seeing improvements in those two key aspects would just be a major quality of life improvement. And I think just for the better of everyone here.
Well, we're just about 4 minutes to our end time, so I think we'll just leave it there. And thank you, candidates, so much for coming. Kristen, thank you. You're still here. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, I am too. And thank you also to our residents and audience for some really great questions and engagement. So actually next meeting, which is May 10th or 13th, which one? 13th, we will have one of two candidate nights. So I know we had a lot of candidates here this evening, but it is primary time, so there are a lot of them. And we hope that you join us then. And if not, then there's always the live stream. So again, and thank you also to Adam for all of your hard work on the technology. And everybody have a great night.